Louisiana's Old State Capitol welcomes you to our exhibition, Jacob A. Riis, How the Other Half Lives. Jacob A. Riis was known as a photographer, but he started out as an immigrant to the United States, having come from Denmark in 1870. He lived in abject poverty until he could get a job at working for the press and working as a police reporter at night. It was here that he experienced the slums of New York City that were the homes of immigrants who lived in tenement houses, shabby, overpriced living conditions that provided very little air circulation, light, or even basic amenities like plumbing. In order to capture as accurate a picture as possible, Riis used a new method of flash photography to go into the tenement houses and capture people at night. Well, flash photography at that time was literally setting off an ignition that would light up a huge illumination for just a few seconds. It was then that Riis captured his iconic photographs of the terrible conditions in which people were sleeping, eating, and living their lives. This is a map of New York City that shows sites in the city where many of Riis's iconic photographs came from, most of which were here in the concentration of tenement houses towards the lower end of the island near the Brooklyn Bridge. Meanwhile, in the rest of the city, a quarter of the population represented the extremely wealthy. Little did the rest of America know that side by side in that same city, the most poor of poor people were living and working and creating wealth for the rest of New York citizens. This is just a reproduction of a bed that a grown adult would sleep on, not even long enough for me, and I'm only 5'6". There were probably lots of rodents and bugs and insects, in addition to the fact that it was very difficult to get enough light, air, and the lack of indoor plumbing also caused problems, which probably meant that people were sicker than they needed to be as well. This was also a time there was a worldwide pandemic. So at that time, the estimates are that of young children, 140 out of 1,000 young children died annually in the tenement conditions. Compare that to 2010 figures, the number is 6. 140 versus 6. These were very, very difficult conditions. In addition to the fact that during the day, these tenement immigrants were working 10, 12 hours a day in sweatshops and making piecework. So this image is really iconic. At first, Riis was stumbling onto people in the middle of the night using his methods for flash photography. Those images became part of his book, which became famous and reproduced all over, called How the Other Half Lives. Then he came up with a new technique. He interviewed his subjects and they posed for portraits. This is little Katie. And when he asked her what she did for a living, she said, "I scrubs." And just the look on her face, you know she did a really good job. There's something about this haunting image. She's only 8, but she looks almost like my age. She's lived the world over in her few short years. These portraits became part of another book called Children of the Poor that helped continue Riis's propulsion into fame. He traveled the country, gave lectures, and showed his photos to people who wanted to help and those who needed to learn more about the real working conditions of America's working class. So many people wanted to help. Once they saw Riis's photographs, they were moved to action. His photographs started a political movement of social reform, and things changed from then on. For example, some of the children left at foundling hospitals were rescued by the Catholic Church and other organizations that were desperately seeking families that could offer them a better life. The little girl who wore this dress was the daughter of a woman who willingly gave up her daughter in search for a better life. My favorite artifacts in the exhibit, aside from the Jacob Riis original photographs and how beautifully they've been displayed through this exhibit, are these postcards with Riis's messages to his family. He traveled all over the country to talk to people about what was going on in New York City and inspire the social reform movement. These postcards show all the places he went, from California to New Mexico, with little messages for his own children, who were lucky enough not to be raised in abject poverty.